Saskatchewan. Start somewhere inside its borders, pick a direction, and you can drive for hours without ever leaving. A land as vast and varied as its rich history. It doesn't matter where you begin or where you end. It doesn't matter if you're moving or standing still. The place will come to you. It will whisper to you. It will tell you stories. It's a place full of stories. Stories of culture, stories of survival, stories of accomplishment, and stories of people. It will capture your imagination. It will become a part of you. It will move you. Every day, everywhere, there's a story in Saskatchewan unfolding. It's a little buzz that comes and goes. A pebble being tossed in the pond. Ripples in the water lapping on the shore from parts unknown. It's nothing extraordinary. It's perfectly ordinary. A little slice of life. A day in the life of Saskatchewan.
With the discovery of gas at Lloydminster in 1934, people began to think of looking elsewhere beneath the rich Saskatchewan soil for gas and petroleum.
The oil industry in Saskatchewan traces its roots to 1926, when a Lloydminster area farmer noticed that his cattle wouldn't drink the water from his new well. When petroleum residue was found in the water samples, interest in drilling oil wells in the area skyrocketed.
Companies began to look seriously for petroleum and natural gas. They found that Saskatchewan's Great Plains area, the breadbasket of the world for so many years, had rich deposits of petroleum and natural gas.
In the mid-1940s, Husky oil founder Glenn Nielsen realized that Lloydminster would be an ideal place for a refinery.
He liked what he heard and just happened to have a refinery that was doing nothing in Riverton. So he loaded it up on flat cars and shipped it to Lloyd.
The early days of the oil industry were much different than today in terms of treatment of the environment. But even back then, the industry knew that it had to make accommodations for the community.
Back in the old days, we had a couple of big pits over at the North End Refinery, and every morning except Monday, we would set fire to the pit. We stayed away from Monday because we had kind of an unwritten agreement with the housewives at Lloydminster that that was wash day, and we were not to burn.
Crude oil is classified as heavy, medium, or light. The heavier the oil, the more challenging it is to remove from the ground. The early oil industry in Saskatchewan revolved around the difficulties of pumping heavy oil, but times have changed.
They had drilled a well out south of Lloyd, and they got this thick, gooey stuff, and they wanted no part of it. Well, today, it's reverse.
The way the demand seems to be growing throughout the world for Saskatchewan's petroleum and natural gas, it's hard to imagine just what the future may hold.
Today, the importance of the oil industry is felt in every corner of the province. More than 20,000 wells operate in Saskatchewan, making the province the second largest oil producer in Canada. The province exports 80% of the oil it produces to the U.S. and the rest of Canada. Oil upgraders located in Moose Jaw, Regina, and Lloydminster output more than 100,000 barrels a day.
It's provided employment for a lot of people. It generates income for the governments. Allows us to do export of a resource we've got here.
The future of the oil industry remains bright, with an estimated provincial reserve of nearly 30 billion barrels.
Well, now you can see that our story is a long way from being finished. Within your lifetime, you may see new crops that we can only dream of today. Until then, goodbye for now.
If you create the kind of climate and allow entrepreneurs to take their know-how, place bets and take risks, then in fact, over time, what will evolve are wonderful businesses that find Saskatchewan a wonderful place to live and raise family, and which will prosper.
IPSCO, founded in Regina, is a leading international producer of steel plate and pipe. The company was started in 1956 to produce steel pipe for a provincial natural gas infrastructure project.
Saskatchewan had made a commitment to gasify the province, so to speak, but all the material, principally pipe that was being used at the time, was being brought in from other parts of North America.
The provincial government saw an opportunity to create economic growth in a new sector. Businessman Bill Sharp was invited to start a pipe mill. Sharp agreed, and with the financial backing of entrepreneurs from Regina and the West Coast, Prairie Pipe began operations.
This was quite a success, and over time, however, they were having difficulty in acquiring their steel needs to make that pipe. So in effect, the company backward integrated to make their own substrate or coil through the development of a second company called Interprovincial Steel.
IPSCO continued to grow, serving Saskatchewan and the rest of Western Canada.
What we have done since then, of course, is to grow more than tenfold and to move well beyond our Saskatchewan roots to becoming the largest player in the production of plate, heavy steel plate products, as well as one of the top tubular producers in all of North America.
At the forefront of the company's success is the implementation of cutting-edge innovations.
We predominantly use scrap. So it's all of our old vehicles, all of our old fridges, stoves, other teardowns that have a large metallic content. And so we remelt, if you like, what had already been created by other steel producers.
In fact, IPSCO recycles millions of tons of scrap metal every year. IPSCO is also responsible for achieving many industry firsts.
In the case of pipe, we were the first to make as sophisticated a product from a spiral formation, a spiral forming of pipe. We actually have produced some of the most sophisticated line pipe steels and the most sophisticated piping products for the oil and gas industry, not only on this continent but anywhere. We were also the first to come up with a different fashion of integrating a number of very large and discrete units of manufacture in the production of steel to bring forward a much more cost-efficient method of making steel plate.
While IPSCO is intent on proving the best product possible, they haven't overlooked their responsibility to the environment. IPSCO spends millions of dollars in the areas of air quality, water recycling systems, and land reclamation. IPSCO's commitment to technological development has resulted in impressive growth.
We have grown from a rather humble beginning in the 60s to being the largest player in the areas that we participate.
As of 2005, IPSCO has facilities in 5 provinces and 7 states. They employ approximately 2,400 people and have recorded sales of over $1 billion a year. Despite its worldwide success, IPSCO remains loyal to its hometown roots and prides itself on being a good corporate citizen here in Saskatchewan. In Regina, IPSCO has built a wheelchair-accessible wildlife park featuring deer, elk, waterfowl, and buffalo. IPSCO has also taken an interest in our youth by establishing an annual essay contest. A prize of $2,000 is awarded to the 5 best essays written by students on the subject of national unity. In fact, IPSCO regularly donates to many different charitable organizations and community projects every year. Since its creation, IPSCO has experienced steady growth and success, a trend that the company expects will continue well into the future.
Well, certainly we have grown dramatically over the last number of years, and through some very difficult times, we have come out to be one of the stronger and one of the better firms within the steel industry, regardless of choice of what one makes. And we would continue to grow. The platform we have has proven to be very effective. We're sound and have scale in the businesses that we participate in, and we would look forward to growing within those areas.
Entrepreneurship, Innovation and good community relations are the backbone of IPSCO, a company that is known worldwide for its premier products and locally for its economic and social contributions.
So we all gotta make a living, an honest buck. A day's pay, they say, to keep the wolves at bay. It's a little fact of life, but who says it needs to be found on the map? Sometimes the best part of ordinary is quirky.
Well, I used to come up here buying fur. The store I bought was almost a laugh, but I had a sneaky suspicion that I could do something with it. And what a nightmare.
Robertson Trading Post, located in La Ronge, is one of the last of the old-fashioned trading posts. Alex Robertson bought the business and operates it with his son Scott.
The average storekeeper couldn't comprehend what the hell we're doing. What you see here is, I hope, a combination of the new and the old. It shows that we can still be competitive and cling to the old days a little bit.
Robertson is one of the few people with a formal education in the fur trade and still earning a living from it.
So I got started in this trade of trapping when I was about 13, 14, and sold it around fur department in Grand Prairie, Alberta. So that's offered me a job working after school on Saturdays. I've been in it ever since.
The Robertsons run a modern retail operation, taking fire season orders, servicing mining industries, tourist camps, and outfitting northerners.
This is the last of a store of this kind. We've mixed the new and the old, and it seems to have worked out all right.
The Robertsons purchase and trade furs at the end of the season. Established customers can get store credit for groceries, cash advances, or paying of bills. The Robertson Trading Post also supports Northern and First Nation artists. They sell arts and crafts and display many historical objects.
These are beaded jackets. That's probably the largest collection of beaded jackets you're ever going to see. That was used in the Yukon for trapping grizzly bears. I tell the odd guy that's for squirrels.
The Robertsons are appreciated for their family approach to business. The Trading Post, under the inspired management of Alex and his son, is one of La Ronge's most successful businesses.
When tourists come in here, everyone goes out smiling. They don't come in here. Once they come in, they just damn well feel good.
The way of things in life have rhythm. Individually, we're a note in the choir. We're all just humans being. We're doing our thing in our own time, in our own way. But you take a couple steps back, and you start to see us all blending together. We are all voices in the choir after all. Individual voices making up a greater whole, day in and day out.
Art Wallman was born on a small farm outside Kelvington. As a child, Wallman suffered from spastic palsy.
I didn't have enough education to get a job, and I was on crutches and all, so what I did was I joined a band, and we toured around the area, and we had a radio show out of CKRM, and that's how I got started in radio.
While touring with the band, Wallman got an audition at a radio station. Wallman was hired, but things went badly on only his second day.
He said, "I'm sorry, they're not going to hire you because they didn't know you were on crutches." And there was quite a few stairs in those days. He figured I'd fall down the stairs.
In the late 1950s, Wallman became the dispatcher for Star Taxi in Swift Current. After 3 years with the taxi company, Wallman got another radio audition. This time was CKSW.
This guy named Tony Day, he set up a tape, gave me some records to play, and he said, "Sit down and pretend you're a DJ." So I rattled away and read some commercials and things for about an hour on this tape. And the station manager at the time, he phoned me up, and I was still sleeping. "I just heard your audition," he said, "and I'm impressed." He said, "Get down here." And I guess I yelled yippee or something like that, and he said, "Just a minute, you're not in yet."
On October 18, 1960, Wallman was hired by Wilf Gilby at CKSW Swift Current. Wallman's afternoon show soon became a hit.
Not a lot of people were just putting callers on the air for the sake of talking with them and having conversations with them. And Art was probably the first person in Swift Current to do that.
We sort of focused our attention on the farming populace, farming and ranching, because this is a community for farming and ranching. And then I started what I call the tractor line, where People could phone in and give messages, and it got wildly popular after a bit. It was really something. They'd phone from all over, and we couldn't even handle all the phone calls that came in.
Wallman's relationship with his audience became the signature of his show and a lifeline for at least one listener.
We had some listeners at Whitewater, Montana. They were ranchers. It was the spring of the year, and this lady was left alone on the ranch. Her husband went to Malta to do some business, and she was having trouble with one of the cows was calving, and she couldn't handle it. She got on the radio and phoned my show and Swift heard here and said, "You got to get a word out to Mickey," was her husband's name. "He's got to come back because I can't handle it, and I'm going to lose them both." And sure enough, he was listening in the old pickup truck, turned her around. And, well, I think it was about 2 hours later, near the end of my show, she phoned back and said, "Thank you, we saved them both."
After 36 years as a voice of Swift Current, Art Wallman retired on August 30th, 1996. And in 2003, he was inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame. Renowned Canadian author William Ormond Mitchell was born in Weyburn in 1914. It was Mitchell's experiences on the prairies that served as a background in many of his works, including his first novel, Who Has Seen the Wind? Mitchell's book was critically acclaimed and a popular success.
When Bill Mitchell started writing, everybody told stories. It was kind of an oral culture, but nobody wrote them down. And Bill was the first native-born Saskatchewanian that did that.
After the success of his first novel, Mitchell went on to create the hit radio show Jake and the Kid. The series ran from 1949 to 1957 with an impressive 320 episodes. But it wasn't enough for Mitchell to write for the show. He also wanted to get in on the action.
He could do a gopher squeak. The producers liked it, and so they'd write the gopher into the show, and then he'd get an actor fee for performing as well as writing.
After Jake and the Kid, Mitchell continued to add works to his portfolio, including a number of plays, one of the most famous being the comedy, The Black Bonspiel of Willie McCrimmon.
He took the Faust metaphor and a team of local curlers in a small town, taking on the Devil's rink in a big shootout for the souls of the players.
In addition to writing, Mitchell was also employed by universities to share his craft with up-and-coming writers.
He was a lifelong teacher, and he had different appointments at universities that really talked about writing in a very down-to-earth way. Mitchell's messy method was how he described his way of doing things, which was to have no form or structure at all when you first approach writing, but just write down whatever comes into your head. And any motivation or strategy just to get a student writing is good, and he was good at that.
In 1998, W.O. Mitchell passed away, and Canada mourned the loss of one of its most popular and influential writers.
The voice of Saskatchewan was really what he represented. So he'll always be thought of in that way, probably as a voice more than as a literary figure.
Everyday stories seem larger than life when they're framed and put on display. They're the moments of our lives captured in time. They're the stories we keep around for a rainy day that might come around once in a while. Someday.
In Saskatchewan, the film industry is a multi-million-dollar business that has grown since the late 1980s. To help film and television producers expand the industry, a provincial support organization, Saskfilm, was created.
People consider it very sexy, when you're talking about film and TV, but the focus really was on putting our people together with those outside of Saskatchewan, building our crew base and building our talent base, and the tremendous impact it makes on the province.
Through the 1990s, the film industry matured and evolved, along with Saskfilm.
And as we've progressed and grown, both as a community and industry in the province, the emphasis has become much more on developing projects that have a chance of being made and a chance of standing up in terms of world competition.
By the end of the 1990s, there was an opportunity to generate more growth in the film industry.
The film industry talked extensively with the government about the need for a production facility and made the argument that in fact without it, it would be difficult for us to attract series television or large-scale productions to the province.
The historic but run-down former Normal School, located on the corner of College Avenue and Broad Street in Regina, proved to be an ideal location. Not only was the building empty and available, but across the alley was the underutilized CBC facilities. The facade of the old building would be preserved, but everything else would be modern and new.
So you had two buildings that were questionable in terms of their usefulness or their longevity. And it was the coming together of the federal government, the provincial government, and the city of Regina that actually made this facility happen.
With more than 30,000 square feet of production space and 4 studios, the facility is a state-of-the-art structure designed specifically for the film and television industry. The Canada-Saskatchewan Production Studios opened for business.
We've had crew in here from Toronto, Montreal, Alberta, Manitoba, Vancouver, and many from the U.S. Everyone consistently will say that this facility is superior to anywhere else that they've ever worked.
Several feature films have been shot at the soundstage, including Tideland, directed by Terry Gilliam, and the Tommy Douglas miniseries. The popular comedy series Corner Gas is also filmed there.
We've seen tremendous success in the last 2 seasons with Corner Gas. I mean, it's Canada's #1 television-rated comedy series. The actual people working in the industry, their average age is about 30. So if we've got a vibrant, successful industry, we have a much higher chance of retaining young people to stay in the province of Saskatchewan, build their futures and careers here, and pay taxes here.
With a first-class crew, a talented pool of producers, and a world-class production facility, all signs point towards a bright future for the Saskatchewan film industry.
I started watching everything that I could get my hands on, reading things about Jackie Gleason, and he was a big influence on me. John Candy later on. Basically anybody who was funny and heavy was an inspiration to me.
Brent Butt has become one of Canada's most recognizable comedians, and his television sitcom Corner Gas is a hit across Canada. Brent was born and raised in a traditional farming community.
I grew up in Tisdale, Saskatchewan, born and raised. T-I-S-D-A-L-E, Team Spirit. I realized early on I wasn't going to be spending my whole life there because I had this desire to pursue show business, and at the time, I mean, it just wasn't an option. There's a bit of a film and TV, industry in Saskatchewan now, but at the time there was nothing. There was farming and farm-related stuff. If you sold farming widgets or farmed, then you were okay. Influences on my comedy were pretty wide too. I mean, mainly my family. So I had 3 older brothers, 3 older sisters. Got to watch them horse around and be funny and kind of developed a sense of humor through that. My dad was very much a showman. He was kind of a ham. He was a great storyteller, larger than life kind of guy, my dad. And my mother has always been kind of subtly funny. She was the kind of the person to kind of get a load of that guy, that kind of thing. In case the show business thing didn't work out, because it might be kind of a pipe dream, I should have something to fall back on. So I left Tisdale in 1984 after graduating to go learn how to become an animator. But I knew early on it's not what I wanted to do. I knew my job would end up being one day I'd be sitting in a little cubicle drawing mouths for somebody, making him say a T, making him say a J. And just the tedium was going to kill me. And I knew I wanted to do stand-up comedy, so I just thought, what am I doing? So I got out while I could still get the tuition back, so that Mom wouldn't have lost a ton of dough on my stupid little, I'm going to be an animator dream. In 1987-ish, I moved to Saskatoon to continue working on this company I started with my friend Colin Olexon. He and I were publishing a comic book together. In February of 1988, I went to a club and performed stand-up in a club for the first time. I had performed it twice in high school for like variety night and drama night. But this February of 88 was the first time I did it in a club. Still probably the best set I've ever had. It's really been 16 years of trying to recapture that magic that I had the first set. I was making a living as a greasy nightclub comic, doing my thing in bars and roadhouses and comedy clubs at night. The TV specials were, a direct result of being a stand-up. I did some stuff with CBC, did some stuff with Global, and ended up doing a hour-long stand-up special on CTV and the Comedy Network. I've always been a fan of sitcoms that, were premise light. I don't like a big premise. All my favorites throughout the years, Honeymooners, very simple premise. I Love Lucy, Seinfeld, Cheers, there's no premise to them. Good characters in mildly interesting situations saying funny things. That's kind of the recipe. So I wrote a treatment for a TV show that took place at a gas station / coffee shop in a small Saskatchewan town. When I decided to make Small Town Saskatchewan the framework for this TV show, I wanted to show the difference between Lacey and Brent and the other locals. So I made her from the biggest city in Canada and made Dog River one of the smallest communities it's roughly 400 people. Dog River is more like the little towns that surround Tisdale. If you lived in Dog River, you'd go into Tisdale to buy your groceries or your rubber boots or whatever you need. We're just kind of under the radar, Saskatchewan. You know, we're a giant chunk of dirt. We're pretty, we're like twice the size of Texas. They talk about how big Texas is. Saskatchewan's about twice the size of Texas. There's less than 1 million people here. One of the things I like about Saskatchewan is that people outside of here really don't know much about the place, but they know it exists, but it's kind of this exotic wasteland, I think, in people's minds. Or they don't know what it is. They don't know if it's like polar bears or rum runners or what's up there.
And the wild man, he was the main attraction. Well, they had him in a cage, of course, and he'd roar at people and everything. People that came to the show complained that they were charging 25 cents to see him. And my uncle says, well, do you think you could buy a wild man for 25 cents?
In the early 1900s, John Steiner came to Saskatchewan from Medford, Wisconsin. He married Mary Christman. They had 3 sons, Dan, Gilbert, and Edwin. For a while, they were just a typical rural Saskatchewan family.
Well, my uncle, he was an entrepreneur. He did various things. He was a town cop in Rosetown. He dug wells by hand for a living. He done pretty everything.
But as it turned out, he hadn't done everything. In the early 1920s, together with his family, John Steiner tried something just a bit out of the ordinary.
In a way, it was a freak show. My one cousin was a wild man, one was a escape artist, and the other one was a magician.
The Steiner Brothers sideshow had no real freaks. They were just an ordinary family who chose a novel approach to entertainment. Part vaudeville and part circus, the Steiner Brothers sideshow traveled throughout the area, performing at local fairs, family gatherings, and in November 1921, they performed at the Rosetown Opera House.
In those days, it seemed people made their own entertainment, and somebody like that was quite popular in the district.
The Steiner brothers never achieved any level of fame. The family eventually packed up and moved to Washington. But they are still fondly remembered as Saskatchewan's first family roadshow, headlined by a wild man, a magician, and an escape artist.
Day turns into night. Every day, every night. It's a rhythm of life, a rhythm of being ordinary. But in ordinary, you can find the everyday stories that make for a good time. Every day, every night.